Welcome back to Cheddar's opening bell. The Omicron variant is raising concerns about how safe it is to travel, just as millions of Americans were ready to jet set away for the holidays. Scientists are still trying to understand how much protection vaccines offer against this new variant, and many questions remain unanswered. Here to give us some insight on holiday travel and the Omicron variant is Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants. Sara, really glad to have you on. What can travelers do right now to keep themselves safe while traveling this year?
Well, it's really important. All of the layered approach to safety and security that we have put in place since the pandemic started really makes air travel the same as being inside any space. So we have to have all those pieces in place, the deep cleaning that goes on, the air filtration that goes on, and the wearing of masks. And that's why flight attendants are required to enforce those mask policies, because when we have all of these pieces in place, the transmission rate is the same as being inside any other space. So you still have to be very careful. You have to practice that proper hand hygiene and be as diligent about this as you can, including following the instructions from flight attendants that when you're going to eat or drink anything, you're lowering your mask for just a moment, taking that sip or drink, and then raising it up again.
We know the news that came out earlier this week, American Airlines, I think just yesterday actually, announced that it's going to be cutting back international flights, at least as scheduled, due to Boeing's Dreamliner delays. Do you expect this to have a big impact on the air travel industry and certainly in passengers in the coming months? I just think about congested flights now that there are fewer of those.
Yeah, it's an issue, but as we try to get international travel back in general, we are not going to recover until we do that. So as we're encouraging people to travel more, opening up those borders, making sure that we're having procedures, the Biden administration continues to assess that and put procedures in place to keep people safe and make sure that we're not adding to spreading these variants and the virus itself. And so it is an issue that we don't have these planes back up in the air, but this has been an issue we've been grappling with since the summertime, that our flights are generally full because we don't have all the aircraft back up in the air. The airlines are still losing money and they're trying to keep those losses low, so they're running as few flights as they can while still trying to meet demand.
You know, air travel over Thanksgiving weekend set a pandemic-era record. I wonder, kind of, a Christmas and New Year's coming up, are airliners expecting kind of this other big surge, and how are they preparing for it?
So we did a lot of work this fall because in the summer what we saw was the result of the gap in funding from Congress last fall from October to December. And as we said, without having that funding there and keeping people in their jobs, we would have people who were losing their credentials to be able to fly, safety credentials and security credentials. So we had to get that training in place, and that was still going on into the summer. What we also noticed is that the airlines were trying to step up and put those routes in place to be able to protect that and the slots that they have so they can compete with each other. And they probably pushed that a little bit too far. But also with the conflict on our planes, we simply have people who are not willing to come to work as much as they used to. And airlines were predicting previously on counting on a lot of overtime hours. So in the fall, we negotiated where they didn't exist, incentives for people to come to work over the holiday season. And that really worked for Thanksgiving. We saw that we have the right combo in place there. And barring a major weather event, we should be fine for the Christmas and New Year's holiday as well.
Well, I'm sure that's something that, a lot of people are enjoying hearing right now, especially if they've, have travel plans over the upcoming holiday. No secret here, there has been a rise in just a number of reports of unruly passengers throughout this pandemic, especially this reopening phase. How are flight attendants kind of dealing with this issue? And now that we've been a few months into this, obviously reopening and more people traveling, have you encountered disruptive passengers? Are they truly kind of seeing more of them, or is that subsiding?
Disruptive passengers are at an all-time high, and we still have not seen a decrease in the numbers from earlier this year. So this has continued to be at extreme levels, although I want to be really clear, this is a small number of people traveling who are causing a persistent problem. And so we have been encouraging the airlines and the airports to work with us. We've got communications that are better all through the process. We've got the FAA saying they have a zero tolerance policy since last January. They've been very aggressive. They've also signed a memorandum of understanding with the Justice Department so that they can trade that information and justice can start to prosecute. And as we see people landing in jail, we believe that that will be the best deterrent to keep these events from happening. But in the meantime, we're really trying to all work together to identify these problems on the ground so that they don't end up on the airplane. And the one thing that is still a problem for us is that airports are continuing to push alcohol, and alcohol is a major contributor to these events. So we're encouraging people to take a second thought about having that drink in the airport, because it will affect you differently up in the air at pressurized 8,000 feet with less oxygen for your body.
Yeah, good to know, and it's sad that, flight attendants are still dealing with that issue. We hope that it, in fact, does subside as we see kind of these stricter penalties from fines to even prosecution happen. Before I let you go, I want to talk to you about this, or ask you get your thoughts on this. The airline industry was one of the largest beneficiaries of the government's kind of record $74 billion in COVID aid. But some critics have said that the relief was maybe unevenly distributed there and left out other industries that were also struggling during this pandemic. What's your response to this argument in terms of the value and the need to kind of, support the airline industry throughout the pandemic?
Well, look, this was our plan, was a payroll support program so that the money could only go to paying workers' pay and benefits to keep us connected to our jobs. I talked about this a little bit earlier. We would not have been able to meet demand at all if we didn't have this program in place. It was the most transparent program in all of COVID relief. You can see exactly where those dollars went, only to pay workers' pay and benefits to keep us in our jobs, and it worked. Airline prices are down low, so inflation has not hit us because we've been able to meet demand, and we were able to continue paying taxes. And I can show you all the thank you notes from the ancillary businesses who support the airline industry, who said they stayed in business because we kept the airline industry afloat. We cover about 1 for every 4 jobs in every community. We promote that. And so we're a major driver of the economy, and this program worked very well. And we're going to testify to that in the Senate this week on Wednesday.
Yeah, and imagine the holiday season, we wouldn't see the ramp up that we're seeing in people able to fly and get to their loved ones had we not had some of that support there. So really great insight. Thank you so much for being here, Sara Nelson, President of the Association of Flight Attendants.